today. If I was going to leave you with just a couple of words about thinking about marketing and your social media presence, it's those three words right there: strategy, story, and tactics. As we're about to talk about, there's a lot of ways where those kind of get backwards sometimes, and so I really want to help us kind of break down sort of where things are now. We got to see a little bit about where they've been, and then we're going to talk about some framework. We're going to have a quick exercise, and then that'll lead right into some really great tactical things that I hope will provide you a lot of value. First, I want to talk just a little bit about me, not because I like talking about myself, but because there are so many different approaches and theories of how you can communicate and market these days, right? So it's good for you to know where my biases are to some extent. So I kind of stumbled into reporting and ended up being the editor of a newspaper for 5 years, right as social media was really gaining a lot of traction. So we went from being sort of a weekly experience on Thursday morning for the guys over at Hardee's to be reading the paper over their biscuits to something that had real engagement and community value throughout the week. It was in Louisa County, and so there was the earthquake, which was for most of the country was maybe a 2-day story, but for us was really a 5-year story. As the rebuilding process went for the schools, and I transitioned over to the schools about a year into that. So there was a lot of rebuilding, a lot of storytelling around that. We also had a new superintendent that came on board, but we had, all the different types of things that you have in that type of position, web migrations, mass communication systems, but then also organizing the spelling bee and calling you for snow days and that kind of thing. So really in that experience, really had touched a lot of different types of communications and marketing approaches. So I ended up starting my own business as Durazio Communications. I do design work, web, social media, and other things as needed for clients. I've worked with some tourism related folks with this Love Louisa campaign here and led the design on the assets for that. Hepatitis C, Hep C is a group out of UVA, and they have a really great model, grant funded and doing some amazing things. And then this logo here, I just like from Team LCPS for Louisa County Schools when we rebranded the new superintendent. Anyway, enough about me. We got to talk about how we got to where we are now. And so we're going to take a look at two snapshots in sort of the history. And so we're going to start off with Ward Cleaver. So this guy was the quintessential early sitcom dad. Just for the record, I was not alive when that show was on, but I was, when I was a kid, there was only so many shows that were syndicated. And so, you had to watch a lot of the old black and white sitcoms until Saved by the Bell came on at 4 o'clock or what have you. So Ward Cleaver, though, if you wanted to sell him Marlboro cigarettes, if you wanted to get him to vote for Nixon, you had a few different ways that you could reach out to him. Right there, he's got his attention on the newspaper. There's also the evening newspaper at that time, right? Television stations, radio programs that he liked, billboard on the ride to his office, right? So these different types of channels were very limited. They were controlled. You were generally either going directly to a salesperson or through an ad agency. So they were expensive, but you got access to that audience, the Ward Cleavers out there that are reading the paper. It's also done for you. You don't have to do any design of the content. It's you walk in and say what you want, and there it is. It's pretty simple. Cut the check and wait for the clients to come. So if we were going to just completely look at a snapshot of what today looks like, to turn that on its head a bit, it would have to be this guy. So Cranberry Juice Guy just breaks down all of those ideas of the walls. He should be the hunted, right? He needs a car. So there should be car ads going at him. He obviously likes to drink juice. He's got, other brands of cranberry juice, apple juice, orange juice. They should be promoting to him. His handle's 420 Dogface. So in certain states, there might be additional products that you might be able to market to this fella. But the bottom line being that this guy really shows how everything has become totally decentralized. Fragmentation, the attention is fragmented everywhere. There's this proliferation of platforms. It's not just an evening newspaper and a morning newspaper. There's all these different places that people could possibly be, and all these different tactics to tell stories in those different places. And then now it's DIY. You're supposed to be doing this yourself in a large part, right? So no wonder when we put those two things on ourselves as marketing our businesses, that it feels really challenging. It feels really super heavy. Now you're supposed to be able to do that in all these different ways. To boot, it's totally free is the idea out there, that this is going to be something that doesn't cost you anything, that it's really, really easy. These things obviously aren't true. There are um, just a lot of different potential pitfalls for you. And so we have to start with strategy, because this is not free. There are so many um, different things that you could be doing. You have to think about opportunity cost. And so it's either going to cost you time, or it's going to cost you money, or it's going to cost you both. So for example, just as an initial example, if we want to think about Instagram, if you want to do well on Instagram, you're going to need some high quality visuals. So are you going to spend the time to take those, or do you even need to spend the time to learn how to take those? Are you going to spend the money to get the gear so that you can take some really great images? Are you just going to pay the photographer for a brand photographer so that then you can get more high quality images? Either way, there's a balance of this idea of spending time or spending money. Even more to the point, there is just no magic bullet. The successful strategy is never one size fits all. It takes customization, because every business has different strengths, different needs, and different messaging for their own unique sales proposition. So we don't want you, what we really don't want is to have you lose a lot of time trying to get a platform going, not finding a lot of success, feeling like you're going somewhere, then you need to start somewhere else. Because in all that time that you've lost, and possibly the money that you've lost as well, maybe you could have just gone to the newspaper guy, the ad rep, and spent some money and had an ad that way. So we've got to figure out what is the right fit for you, what's going to be effective and what's going to be efficient. So thinking about a couple other principles that I want to lay out before we dive deeper. Story is absolutely critical. Story is your brand in action over time. You've really got to know your story. It makes it, when you take some time to reflect on it and think through what it is that you want to communicate, it makes it a lot easier to effectively post and continue to tell your story in all these different channels that you might be. Engagement. I think that metrics are very important, but I don't think that engagement as a metric is the right way to think about it. Because if we want to think about genuinely having authentic connections with people in an audience that we create when we think about social media, we don't want to just count likes, because I'd rather have 3 likes and 1 comment that is, hey, can I buy this today, rather than a post that gets me 1,000 likes and maybe even gets shared. And even if it gets viral, if I'm not getting sales, that's not actually helping me advance my business. Any business in any industry could conceivably find success on any platform, right? I think that there's a lot of times that playing against the grain can be really great, but in general, and especially if we're starting off, we want to play the odds. And so I like to kind of think through these things in a space of these 5 elements. Don't worry about jotting all these down. We're going to go through each of them. But ideally, what we want to do is we want to have the audience, the who we're talking to, the channel, where we're talking to them and communicating them with them, the message, what we're saying to them in our story, the tactics, how we say it, and things that are aligned with us. We want to try to get that sweet spot in the middle of those, and really be able to optimize our message. So in terms of audience, so this is where your efforts like customer discovery really come in handy. Obviously, market research is something that can really be important to try to understand the size of who it is that you're trying to target. And that's something that SBDC does. And we absolutely have great resources on that for you. But we want to dig deeper beyond just how many people fit into a demographic. We want to really think about what platforms are they on? Like with Ward Cleaver, where are they putting their attention, and how can we get into that flow? What brands do they already have an affinity for? Really, when we think about audience, we're thinking about who is your target. When we think about channel, we're thinking about the platforms. We're thinking about the different opportunities that we have to reach them. For me, I always think about, where is the undervalued attention? Where can we do this at a lower price point and get the best bang for the buck if there is going to be a dollar attached to it? We also want it to be something that is convenient, and ideally the type of platform or approach where we have available content. So in this space, we're thinking about placement. Where do we place our message to reach our audience? Message. When we think about our message, these are the topics that we're talking about, the type of content. This includes things like offers, the idea of brand, collaborations. This is really your story. So when we put these pieces together, Now we know who we're talking to, we know where we're talking to them, and then what we're going to say to them. But we think about tactics, those need to be specific to the platform. Those need to be based on the audience and influenced by the message. So a great example of tactics that you could, sometimes people are not doing at all, and then other times they are, is like the hashtag on Instagram, right? So if you're not, like, the hashtag isn't necessarily going to help you in a lot of different other places or spaces, but it can be really important in Instagram. And so it can be a really great piece to play into the discovery platform that Instagram can be. And so using that tactic there only helps you there. But that said, it's really hard to figure out how to use hashtags, right? And so there's going to be some testing and learning to that tactic, just like there would be to any other one. But above all else, we want to try to make our message feel native to the platform that we're working on and that we're communicating with the audience in. We want it to feel, again, based on that audience, but native and authentic to where we are, because we don't want to see something that stands out when somebody's scrolling. We want it to stand out in a positive way, not in a negative way. The last piece that a lot of folks forget about is thinking about you. This needs to be something that is genuine for you. If you're taking on the role of marketing your business, and you're going to be doing it regularly, this is something that's going to have to feel right for you. So, for example, for me, I personally, I don't like Twitter. Twitter for me just feels like I'm getting shotgunned at headlines like all day long. It just doesn't, it's not a good fit for me. And so I personally don't like Twitter. So if I make, and I'm not saying Twitter's bad, it's just not a good fit for me as a scroller, right? So if I make a plan for my business that I'm going to post on Twitter 12 times a day, this doesn't feel like that's a good plan just starting off the gate, right? I need to find the type of platform that already feels natural and good for me, as well as is a good place to meet my target audience. So there's a push and pull in some of that. Obviously, there might be times where you have to go outside of your comfort zone, where I might have to take a little stab at Twitter. But in general, we want to try to find things that are aligned with you and your skills. Also, the type of content that you're going to have. If you are an accountant and you're really in the spreadsheet game, and you're really, looking at numbers and figures and forms, that might not be really visual enough for Instagram. And so then you might say, okay, well, either I don't go into Instagram, or I need to pay someone to do some brand photography so that I can be good on Instagram, or I can get better quality in my Instagram posts. So those types of different considerations all play out, but it's all about trying to be authentic and trying to be aligned with all these different goals at once. So thinking through those, there's different approaches, different ways that we can go about these. And so then we kind of get to the thinking about this in terms of social media, is it the right answer? And I think that's not necessarily the right question. Social media is, in a lot of ways, an obligation at this point, but there are different levels of being involved in social media. And it's not probably not going to be your only answer. And so we have to kind of set the expectations right, of what we're expecting it to do. A lot of times people are hopeful that they're just going to put up a post and it's going to go viral, and great, they're going to be like cranberry juice guy, and they're going to be doing well, just off of that. And it's certainly not like that. And you certainly can't expect that putting out one mediocre post a week is going to generate 10,000 units of sale a month. So there's going to be, setting expectations is a really important piece of it. And so, thinking about that time money balance, though, we definitely want to start off with a strategic approach to it. So a couple of cautions before we put all of our eggs into social media baskets. Social media is not monolithic, right? There's not just like one button you push and send it to social media. It's very different to tell a story on Instagram than it is on TikTok, or to be on Twitter. These are different types of things that require different tactics. And too often I see folks that have one post and they one idea of what a post should be like, and just blast it across different things, which isn't necessarily always a bad strategy. But if they're expecting some kind of result, I guess what I really worry about is people that sometimes say, well, I just want to push a button and send this to everybody. I just want everybody on every platform to see this right now. There isn't such a button, and if there was, you couldn't afford it. And so, the important thing is to set your expectations right and realize that we're going to be trying to deploy the best tactics in each platform, in each situation. So, things are always changing on the platforms themselves. And that's also true. That's also true, particularly when we think about search engine optimization for websites. There are many things that change very frequently that sometimes even the developers themselves don't fully understand. So what you have to do is recognize that that again, with the expectations that there are going to be times that things are going to change, and that you can't necessarily assume that this is the only way that it would be. It's hard to grow organically as opposed to being paid, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible. Again, it's setting the expectations. If you have the right content and you're dialing in your tactics and you're continually working on getting better and growing and learning, then you're going to be able to build audience. And what we like about audience is, just like Ward Cleaver in the newspaper, now you got your Ward Cleavers and they're hearing your story over time and they're engaging with your content. That creates a connection with them, and that is how then you kind of shift them down the funnel, being towards being active customers. But no matter what, when we think about this process, this is another business process, just like if you were on the line making widgets. So we've got to be efficient about it. And this is where, if there's anything today that I'm hoping that you take away, is some tips and tricks on how to be more efficient in this. First, we want to talk about the different levels of investment in a platform. So the first level is just very basically claiming it, just taking it, getting your logo as the profile picture, putting in your phone number, your website, putting some information in the about. We want to do that because these platforms are also search engines in and of themselves. So if someone is going to Facebook in your town and looking for your service in your town, you would love to pop up when they search for that. So it's particularly true. YouTube, just such a huge search engine that is, and things like Pinterest as well. I mean, this is an easy way to not necessarily have a sustained social media presence on there, but at least claim it and at least add it to your asset so that people will be able to find you that way. The next step of that is decorating the windows a little bit. So putting up a few posts. Maybe if you were going to be targeting Instagram, but you wanted to kind of get as much decorating the windows going on Facebook as possible, you could link up so that when you post on Instagram, it's pushing over to Facebook. And then even though that content might be optimized for Instagram, at least you're decorating the windows, right? At least you're populating the page on Facebook and engaging there if it makes sense. So then that next level down, when we get to step 2 there, then we're doing some regular content production and storytelling, whatever that means for you, but you're at some kind of level, you're putting stuff out there, you're creating content for that platform. And so this is where somewhere in this level 1 to 2 is where a lot of small businesses end up kind of getting stuck, because they start to see this is taking a lot of time. And it's not necessarily getting me a lot of results. And so I don't necessarily encourage you to push on to number 3, because that might not be the right fit for you. But at number 3 is where we start seeing theoretically some more build of audience. And so that's where we're collaborating with other brands and pages and profiles. We're putting in kind of an optimal effort level where, we're hitting a real consistent and hopefully a higher level, depending on the platform, what that particular number might be. But we're really kind of getting to that number of posts, and really starting to have a little bit more going on the page. Usually at that level 2, we're talking about the content itself being more optimized and being a better fit and even more native for the platform, even higher quality, and just continue to grow and basically get better at it. That 4th level is a level that isn't necessarily right for everybody either, and that's more paid promotion, moving ads, and that a lot of times doesn't make sense for a lot of businesses. It just depends on what the situation is. But of course, then at that point, not only are you putting in time, but you also are putting in the money as well. And you're not just putting in the time on the content. Now you're also putting in the time on the ad content, and figuring out how to deploy the ads and whatnot. So that can definitely be a whole other level there as well. So now when we're thinking about these different platforms, obviously, many of you who have experienced many of these. So just thinking about relative is what I'm kind of trying to do here a little bit. thinking about Facebook, the volume of activity on Facebook, or the users, I should say, is just really, really high, and that's one of the things that makes it such an attractive platform. The content with the shareable piece is great. Having conversations, having the search function by itself, like I said, that decorating the windows and claiming the page approach, that really is very helpful. The groups, there's a lot of brands that are doing some interesting things with groups, and definitely something to consider for certain types of businesses. On Instagram, the discovery angle of it is really great. There's a lot of things that happen through hashtags. The idea of the curated feed is now kind of being complemented by the fun stories and reels approach. There's a lot of things happening on that platform, and definitely requires even more staying engaged probably than others, I would say. But certainly great volume there as well. Pinterest, that search is pretty fantastic there. The search engine quality of it, the visual is very high there. There's a lot of inspiration that is happening there, and that also really makes it valuable, especially if there's some buyer education that needs to happen. And a lot of bloggers are using Pinterest with a lot of great success. Twitter, a lot of conversations. The access across levels has been something that from the beginning kind of set it apart. And again, very shareable type content. LinkedIn is kind of a tricky nut to crack with the feed. And so a lot of folks, when we think about using LinkedIn, rather than more of a content strategy, a lot of times they're using it as part of networking and prospecting and even more of a direct sales type approach. And so the feed, though, there is opportunity there. It's just that there are fewer people who are really going in there and spending time scrolling every day the way they are on other platforms. YouTube is fantastic as the video library tool for your website or social media, but don't forget it in and of itself as a search engine, and all the opportunities that you have there. So making sure that you are completing your about and putting your contact information and using it as a platform by itself, not just as the tool for your other platforms. TikTok, I just put it on here. Obviously the demographic is way younger. So unless your target audience is what I like to call sub-millennial, that's not really, we're going to play the odds again, right? So probably not a lot of reason to focus on that, but that doesn't mean there's not any reason to focus on that. It's kind of just depends on what your situation is and how you might use it as part of a broader strategy. So again, I don't lay all these out because I think that you should do all of them. I think that the bottom line is that we need to know about all of them so that we can make a good selection in terms of what our strategy might be. So we're about to break into just a couple of minutes. Well, in a few minutes after this exercise, we're going to talk about some more sort of tactical and specific type approaches. But before that, I kind of want you thinking a little bit more about your business, about your brand, and what your story is. So I want you to think through and just jot down 3 to 5 topics that might that really would be the kinds of things that you would want to message through social media, or even another way, if you were going to do newsletters or what have you. 3 to 5 topics. So I put over here a post for a client of mine, wedding videographer. So for us, we use this twice monthly. We take a review and we put it in a branded format and say, here's somebody that was really pleased with the work. For another nonprofit client of mine, we have Team Member Tuesday, and every other Tuesday, picture of a team member. Here's a little bit about the bio of them, what they do for the nonprofit, what they're, but then what they are personal. They're a little bit about them personally, so that people can connect with them. Definitely want you to think about your values, the values of your business, what inspires you, and what are some other things that you could push out there that you would want to talk about on a regular basis. So let's just take about 3 or 4 minutes and jot down some of those. All right, everybody got a little something? Anybody want to share something about their story? Any brave souls? You can come off mute.
I'll share.
Great. Aaron, tell us about your business too.
Okay, so I am starting a social networking platform. It's called Expand My Tribe. It's basically looking for people who want to enrich their social life, kind of a cross between Meetup and a dating app. But it's not just for romantic relationships, it's also for platonic relationships. So my story is enrich your social life. For those looking for authentic relationships, let us help you find your people, do what makes you happy, and then find others who will add to that.
Awesome. Awesome. I like that. I like that. So building on that, what are some topics that you would expect to be hitting on a regular basis? Hitting on might be a bad choice of words given your business, right? So what do you think, how can you take that to a granular level of what like an individual post might be about?
Right. So basically that's what I have. Only thing I've been doing is kind of posting on Instagram and trying to gather an audience. And the types of things I post are like, take some time for yourself today. And then when you're ready to find your people, let us know. And then I'll have like a post of like somebody drinking tea with like their puppy laying by them. Or, what are the things that when you get out of the house that you like to do? Or would you like to find someone to go camping with, hiking with, what areas, if you had a friend to go with you, would make your life richer,
Yeah.
And then I said, last week I posted a photo of somebody having a dinner party, and I said, do you have enough people to round out your crew? You can still eat outside. Why don't you throw a party this weekend? And I also started doing feature Fridays where I'm trying to launch in DC. So I have I feature someone and have photos and say what they like to do around the DC area and what kind of friends they would like to meet, what they're comfortable doing, in environment.
Yeah, those are great. I love that. I really like, obviously anytime you can put people on there, right? So I mean the actual individual user piece, it's fantastic content, right? And then I really like the part about positive about someone who is taking care of themselves and thinking about themselves, because a lot of the target theoretically is someone who wants to meet more folks, but they might right now be more of in a solo kind of thing, right? So there might be activities that they're doing solo that they'd love to be doing with someone else. And so kind of finding that space where they're in between and helping them shift and make that transition, that sounds awesome. So I really like that. Great. So you've got some good tactical things or good specific things as we go into this tactical phase that should be good. Does anybody else have any want to share?
I'm happy to share.
Hey, Missy.
Hi. So my business, I'm still active duty. And so I am transitioning out in the next 10 months or so. And I have worked with journal officers for about the last 10 years as like protocol and executive assistants and things like that. And when they retire, they sit on boards or get their own LLC and start doing consulting. But the DoD provides them a staff when they're active duty. And then it ends up being their wife, typically, right? So their staff is of zero. And so basically I'm going to recreate what they're used to having, a scheduler and a comptroller, like their travel person, their lawyer's going to be on call, those kind of things that they usually just pick up the phone and people just come and scurry. So I think I've done a couple transition seminars. And so to try to, when I think about my story and capturing 20 years of service and explain that, like, I'm not an event planner. Like, I didn't just like get 4 years experience and now I can plan your party. I would travel with the Commandant of the Marine Corps to a country, and we wouldn't just represent that company. We represented the country. And if we gave the wrong gift to a Japanese counterpart, or we said the wrong thing, or we did the wrong gesture, it was like the country's bruising, not just. So the level of responsibility on me was different than like I forgot the napkins.
Right.
So my story is like bringing that expertise of, I know what pressure feels like when I'm flying across the country and really walking into a door of a counterpart, or spending a week with spouses from a different country and making sure we're doing all the right things to send the right message. So
Wow.
20 years experience, worked for the Commodore of the Marine Corps. I want to exceed expectations every time. So like being militant, I think, I know there's a transition of like not knife handing everybody, but when my client is that person, then that's an expectation. We have like implicit communication. So you don't have to retrain me, because you can actually talk to me the exact same way you've always talked to people, because that's the way I think.
Yes.
So
I
I
just
think
love how
having,
you've identified your target so well. Like, I mean, that is like so like specific that you know them, you know who they are, you know where for a lot of them where their attention is going to be, and you know
Mhm.
what that message needs to be to really help convert them and help explain to them the value that you're going to be able to provide. Just from a concept stage, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
That's,
I think, and I sat down, I had a meeting yesterday, and I think one of exactly what you're saying, which is like capturing all of the things monetarily that they're given by the DoD,
mhm.
and put like a monthly tab on it and say, you just get this the moment you walk in the door. But now all of these things cost money, and they're individually. So I want to present like a one-stop shop where you call me and I will subcontract out all of those things. Eventually I would love to have my own team that exist, but in the beginning I will be the one that you don't have to call the lawyer and call the travel person and call the scheduler and all those things. It'll just be one space. So
Oh my God.
yeah.
That's fantastic. That's
Okay.
fantastic. So then too, also we could see, some themes, definitely themes around service and character and responsibility are going to be things that even if you
Mhm.
don't do them explicitly, which I think you will and would want to often, it also should kind of be under the surface of your visual assets, right? And different branding elements and different things that's going to influence so much. So yeah, you can really see that going forward and how that could come together. So I think that's great. That is
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Um, all right, so now is when we start taking these ideas that we've got, and we start thinking that next level of what is it that we're going to do? What is this going to start to look like? And this is where I definitely want to make sure that you are getting tons of value and something that you can start thinking about today. So a big focus this next first step is integration, right? We're thinking about we just talked about all these different platforms. So it is not going to be very efficient for you to try to make a TikTok in the morning and then go post to Twitter 4 times in the afternoon and then start working on your video content, another kind of video content later. So we've got to pick one platform as kind of our pillar, right? That's the best place to start, is just picking one that really we're going to be not just a level one of claiming the page and decorating the windows, but we're going to start getting active in it. We're going to start trying to tell our story there. So when you pick that one, that's sort of where you're beginning your development of that content, what it's looking like. We also then want to think about what others could work together in a way that makes sense. So maybe it's we've got this idea that we want to start communicating with them different ways. So we've got a website, theoretically, we've got, social media, possibly we've got email. We want to figure out how to move them around there. So give you an example of a client that I helped. She was a new real estate agent, and she had a real estate agent friend that was just really good at Facebook, and she was trying real hard. She was trying her best, but it just wasn't a good fit. And so I told her, let me take a look and see what's going on. She was writing, these Facebook posts that were 5-paragraph essays, basically. I didn't mention yet, but she was a teacher that had became a real estate agent. And so for her, those written words, no knock on teachers, my mom was an English teacher, but for her, those words were very, very important, that she got them right and that she had flow and transitions and all that. The problem is that wasn't really a good fit for Facebook, right? It's a little bit more disposable content than that. But She also mentioned that she was really enjoying doing these videos about these particular issues that homeowners were facing. And I said, okay, that's good. This is good. Let's do this. So we drove her to work on developing these videos that then she would use. She would have those and post them on YouTube. Then she would write a blog that was sort of aligned. It was in the same space as the video, but a little bit different, take on it, and then post that to her website with the link to the video. Then when it was time to post on Facebook, she wasn't writing an essay. She was linking to the blog with a couple of sentence setup. So now she's got Facebook content. She's pushing over. She's got the blog. Now the blog is giving her great keywords on her website. So that's increasing the juice for her website. And then now she's also, pushing back to YouTube, maximizing on there. So that synergy between those three was really great. And so it's really helped her, kind of get herself going in the field, was just making that small change. And so it was really awesome to see that. She had lots of different skills, but without thinking about the strategy for how they would actually work together and having a defined plan, it just was a total mess. And so, you could also see too, you could interchange, okay, well, maybe if you were trying to tell story with social media, then some of that content becomes content for your newsletter. And then when you send a newsletter, email newsletter, then you're pushing people back to the social media page to say follow us there, or or maybe it's a blog post. It could also be something smaller. Maybe there's a resource page that you set up on your site, and then that's the kind of thing that you post different ways. So we use those. Try to use those together to get different value out of that same piece of content. That workflow, and use it wisely, is so critical, because again, we've got to be thinking about efficiency. So just because you posted it on social media doesn't mean that everybody saw it. So it still has great value to go in an email newsletter that you might send. It still has wonderful value to be on the website in some way. But that's a different communication piece. So you might have to reframe it. So you might have to move some words around, but that doesn't mean that it's, oh, it was on there, so I'm done with it. And so so I guess the bottom line being that we want to take that one piece of content and try to use it down all the different channels that make sense, so that all the people we have attention in different spaces, we're getting at the right way. So, so now thinking about efficient production, right? The first step that you've got is to try to predetermine a level of content that you can consistently produce. And so where this normally starts, I'll tell you how this normally goes, right? I'm going to post 3 times a week. Oh, that's awesome. Sounds good. I'm going to post Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Great. Monday morning, feeling good. You get up, haven't started anything yet. You put that post up. It's great. Maybe you got 2 likes and your mama commented on it or something like that. But, but you got the post up and you feel good. Wednesday comes around. Oh crap, I am in the middle of this thing. It's really crazy. That other post didn't get a lot. You know what? I'll just post tomorrow. Spoiler alert, the next time you think about this is Friday afternoon, when you're trying to get out of here and you've got this new thing that just came at you. You didn't post on Wednesday. You didn't post on Thursday. You haven't posted yet today. And now what is it that I should post about? I don't, and you start something, I don't know, that's not good. And you just end up not doing it. And then you've got this feeling like, oh, I really failed at my goal this week, or, oh, I didn't get anything out. The problem is because we're going about it the wrong way. You wouldn't do anything else that you knew was coming. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you're going to have to post, but you're waiting until Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to do it. It's kind of the same approach that if you were a cook in a kitchen, it's like waiting for the order of mashed potatoes to come in before you start peeling the potato and boiling the potato and then mashing the potato. You're never going to be able to get the product out in time in those little chunks. So we've got to start thinking about this from the higher level of, we need X amount of content for the month. So that's why we want to start thinking about the level of content that we're going to be producing. Then around that, we start to put an actual tactical strategy on this. We're going to have an editorial calendar or a publication schedule. Okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is what I'm going to post, but what's going to post on Monday? I heard Feature Friday, right? So on Feature Friday, okay, that's when we do our features, right? So our features are going to go on Feature Friday. What are we doing on Monday? What are we doing on Wednesday? But having that plan done ahead of time, then we go ahead and batch produce the thing. Instead of waiting until Friday to make Feature Friday, How about we make all the feature Fridays for the month, along with all the other content, in one big chunk at one time when we sit down and think about our story strategically over the course of the month. Hey, that's right. We're going to have a sale next week. So we should probably put something this week about that. Or we should put this, this is a holiday. This is a great time where people are coming in, or, oh, it's going to rain, or whatever it might be. Let's look at the whole month as a block, and then batch produce that content so that we have intentionality, instead of trying to figure out on Friday afternoon when we're trying to get out of here these two posts that we're going to make out of not knowing, not really having anything done ahead of time. And so, a lot of times when I've brought that up, the first thing that folks worry about is, well, gosh, what if something really cool happens? And I want to post about it. That, well, yeah, sure, you can still post about it. It's just that we got most of the work done ahead of time. It's that we've already met a base level of what we were going to communicate. So you could also, instead of posting it right then, if it's what we would call evergreen, and it would be just as effective to post it next month, then maybe you hang on to it and say, gosh, I got a head start on next month's batch. And that's a great thing. And as you continue to try to work on a process like this, where you're carving out a couple of hours a month in a block and trying to at least get the plans down for what you're going to do, then you're going to start to be able to pick up even more efficiently and see, oh, that's going to be great for me next month for this. I can use this for that. It's a framework that's going to allow you to be successful. So, but the thing about it is, if you're going to do this big batch of content, you need some tools to help you out with that. So some of the platforms have schedulers that you can use. If not, there are independent schedulers. I'll show you this one from one that I use called Loomly. These are individual posts on these individual days. I can actually, click and drag to just move to another one. As you see the different icons for the platforms on there, let me back up for a second. So you basically go into a scheduler and then you link the platforms for those different ones. So it's all already done. So when you set it, then it's automatically going to shoot out for you. There are a couple of asterisks on those. Instagram's a little bit trickier to match up with those. But in general, that's the workflow that's happening with these. So those are all preset and linked up. So when you take one post, like you see this first one here, sparklers on the 9th, that has a different inside of that is a chunk where I can write what I want to say in Facebook, but I can edit it for what it's going to say on Instagram. So then if I take these things, you can see some of my Wedding Wednesday, right? It's a wedding videographer. So Wedding Wednesday, yay, that's a pretty popular hashtag. Testimonial Tuesday, these different types of things that sometimes they're just shorthand for us so that we're thinking about what our content is in our plan. So these types of schedulers give you the space to work in. It also allows for different users, so it can be collaborative. So if there's multiple people that are involved in this, or like in this case, I'm the social media manager for the brand. And so I go in and produce, and then he goes in and checks off. And there's a workflow even for that as well. So definitely it's a really great way to take the idea of batch production and then making it effective in a space that you can do. A couple of good scheduler options. Oh, I should say before I say that, I don't have necessarily any that I'm giving you exact pricing on, but roughly for some of them, if you're one brand on one platform, it's going to be free. If you're, a little bit more than that, one brand, multiple platforms, $9.99 or something like that a month. Maybe there's probably, $15 levels. For the one that I'm on with Loomly, I have a handful of brands and I think about a dozen platforms. And so it's about $35 a month, which is a great value for me to have that structure, but you can get that at a lower price point. It's just based on number of brands and platforms. So Hootsuite was one of the earlier ones that really got a lot of traction. Loomly is newer. Metricool is a new one that I have not personally checked out a lot, but I've seen some really great things about, and I'm kind of wanting to check it out. Buffer, and then there are platform focused options, especially for Instagram. That is definitely one where it's got kind of its own niches that those for Instagram there. So here's the big reason why we want to do that. The reason we want to have all that done ahead of time is because we want to put the social back in social media. The engagement, right? Remember we talked about that a little bit earlier, that like it's not just how many people liked this post. It's also who did I connect with here? Talking about building your tribe, right? I mean, this is right on point with that. This is what social media is supposed to be about. Is it's supposed to be being able to connect with folks and potential customers. And so there's two different ways that happens. One is on your page. And, you know, of the two, you know, people are usually better at this one, which is someone messages them and says, hey, what are your hours today? And, you know, message them back and let them know. But, you know, I mean, there's also on your page, there's also somebody follows you. Well, if you only have 14 followers, it might be worth sending a message to that person and saying, hey, thanks for following me. We've got some great content coming. You know, if it's somebody that you know, that's great too. But if not, that's even more important to put that social element back to it. But then there's also on the other pages, right? So, you know, if you're in an industry and you're trying to connect with different clients, then some of your maybe not necessarily direct competitors, but people who are also in that industry, you know, it's good to go and you know, make positive comments and have positive engagement on their pages as people then see you. There's nothing, you know, inauthentic about it. I mean, you're genuinely saying, hey, this is a really great picture, like this mountain picture here, right, from Pippin Hill. You know, going on there and saying, hey, this is great. Or if it's you know, whatever it might be, something that is positive and on brand with you, and highlighting the things that are a value to your business, that gives other people in that feed and in their audience a chance to connect with you. So it's another way that collaborations happen. But the goal is having all that busy work kind of done ahead of time so that you can be nimble and available to do this type of connecting. So, you know, when we start really thinking about all these different pieces of it, it is not as easy as just riding the longboard and sipping on cranberry juice. There's a lot of stuff to be done here, or at least stuff to try to get strategic about, which we maybe haven't been before. And so some people think about outsourcing in this case. You know, how much does it cost? Some of that is going to depend on geography. And of course, you know, talking earlier about the idea of ad agencies in an earlier time, there certainly are marketing agencies these days that do this as well. So you kind of have an agency level and a freelancer level. And so, you know, in terms of a freelancer, generally we're talking about done for you content is going to be, you know, somewhere in a few $100s a month, is going to be a good rough range. Depending on number of platforms, number of posts a week and whatnot. You know, with an agency, we're probably going to be getting well north of that. And depending on how much you have them doing, could be quite expensive. But at the same time, it's simple. They know what they're doing, and you know, they have the tools, they have the experience, and can help you with that. Is it worth it is a question that only you can answer. I do think it's important to remember too that there are a lot of coaching and learning options out there. So whether it's going to a social media for you class, that's maybe more, once you kind of get that strategy figured out and say, hey, I want to be, Instagram is where I'm going to be. I really want to dominate Instagram. Then you can go to an Instagram specific and learn some specific tactics there. But maybe it's, you know, there's different, there's also options with individuals who could coach you, I guess, you know, in terms of being, instead of being your done for you social media manager, that they could be someone who is helping you review content, and that would be at a lower price point because it's not the done for you approach. And then we often get this idea of, can I get my neighbor's cousin sister to help, right? And so that definitely can be an option. It can be great, but I would just always encourage everyone to make sure that you are maintaining the awareness of what the passwords are and the login information, because I've seen so many brands that had, you look back at the page history and it just looks amazing, and they haven't posted anything for 4 months, and I'm like, hey, what's up? Oh yeah, well, we had such and such here, and they were a student and they were really great, and then they had finals and then they didn't come back. And I said, okay, well, great, well, why aren't you just doing something? Oh, we can't even get into it now. Okay, so you got to make sure that it's still a responsibility of yours, even if you're outsourcing, even in a free way, or a friend price kind of way, with someone that's more in your network. You definitely want to make sure that you're doing that, and also reviewing the content every once in a while, jumping into the DMs and making sure that everything there is on the up and up as well. So yeah, so that would be kind of the tips on that. That said, I do think that there is every opportunity for you to be successful in it, and that even if this does sound a little bit hard, it might be a good idea to kind of think through what the plan looks like before you would spend any money with anyone else to do it. And if you're here today, I think you've got some interest in that anyway. So again, starting off, I mean, you got to figure out who that audience is and where you're going to connect with them, what the kind of things you're gonna tell them. And we had the two volunteers that talked about, you know, they know who their audience is, They know some places where they might connect with them, and they definitely know what they want to talk to them about. When you have an editorial calendar and a workflow set up, it's a lot easier to know what it is that you're communicating. And when you think through the tactics, when you have kind of a platform decided, you can really think about the tactics and that individual platform rather than think about, you know, rather than bouncing around and having something that feels more like monolithic. You can really get into what's going to help me here on this platform in this space. And then I highly recommend thinking about this in a batch production approach, so that you can be the most efficient with it. And so that is my presentation today. I would love to take any questions that you have.